Hello, everyone, and welcome to Five Questions today with Wendy Pease of Rapport International. She is the president over there. And today we're going to be talking about language translation. So, Wendy, why don't you go ahead and just dive in a bit into your background, give the audience an idea of who you are, what Rapport International does, and set the table for us before we jump into the five questions I got for you.
Sure. Yeah. I lived internationally when I was a child. And so my first exposure was going to first and second grade in a school where I spoke half a day in Spanish and half a day in English. Then we moved to the Philippines, and then I lived in a small farming town in Taiwan where my dad was doing agricultural research. And so we were definitely a minority. The Chinese people in the town had never seen blonde-haired kids, and in the culture it was acceptable to come over and try to touch our hair. So I had a real feeling of what it was like to be different and not speak the language. So I've always been fascinated by that, always understood that, people want generally the same thing: safety for their family and income, have time for loved ones and, to stay safe. So as I went through school, we moved back to the United States. I learned French and Spanish in school. And then I went on to Penn State, where I majored in foreign service, and decided I was going to go to law school, but then I got into sales and loved that, and then started a business. Decided I didn't know how to grow it, so I went back and got my MBA from Dartmouth College, and coming out of there, I held senior level marketing positions and business development, and also in global marketing. And about 16 years ago, just over 16 years ago, I bought Rapport International and absolutely loved it because it takes all the things in my background and merges them together.
That harmonious moment where everything you've been working for in life just comes into this one company where you're like, oh, this is it. I did it. Like all the things that I've been doing so far has led up to this moment right here. That's awesome. That's
exactly.
It's funny that like you ended up in sales after going through school and stuff. But that's always such like a common story. People are just like, yeah, graduated, ended up in sales and just fell in love with it. Like the amount of times I hear that if I had $1 every time, I'd be a rich man.
Yeah, and it's such a shame because kids don't really hear about sales, but it's a great way to really learn about business and interpersonal relationships, and you're dealing with problem solving. Lawyers are they're entrenched deeply into problems, but sales is more, you're at the forefront of solving in a more positive way. So going that direction was much better for me than going on to law school.
Awesome. Well, now that we know a bit about you and we kind of understand where you're coming from, I'm going to jump into some of these questions here and give people an idea of, the importance of language translation, specifically in regards to like the sales and sales development position. Starting off, translating a piece of content into another language is something that, I think a lot of us can kind of roughly do with like Google Translate and services like that. It's not hard to execute, but there's something to be said about translating something and creating something that's truly multilingual. Can you dive a bit into the differences between just translating and creating multilingual content and sort of the aspects of that might be important for someone in sales development?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much on, neural machine translation and AI and Google Translate, and people are thinking, oh, I can pop that up on my website. And we did a search for the number of companies that fit criteria that have Google Translate on their site. And it's a lot. And I think it's only a matter of time before there's a legal case against somebody that has that on their website. And there's multiple. Well, let's start with what works well with Google Translate. What works well is it makes something accessible to people that they didn't have before. If you got something in another language, you just deleted it or ignored it. Now, if you get an email in another language, you can pop it into Google Translate and get the gist.
Right.
So if it's junk, then you can delete it. If it's something that's important, then you can move forward on it and know you need to pay attention to it. So that's wonderful. I mean, that's technology for a good use. Machine translation is also good if you have a very formalized, structured way of writing, because then you can train the machine translation to continually spit it back. Here's my formula. This is what it is. Here's my sport. So TripAdvisor does this well. If you go in all their listings have the same format for listings. So hotel, it's, you know, this, and this, and you get the gist. What it does not do well is communicate in a high quality way. And the problems are that there's so many changes in languages that happen. Like Webster's adds multiple languages every quarter to the dictionary, and those can't keep up with it. Or else you have words that have multiple meaning, like head. Head can be a part of the body. It can be the leader of a company, or it could be a slang for the bathrooms. So, you know, if you say, I'm going to the head, what does that mean? And I just popped that into translation for Spanish, and it gave me the body part, which it could have meant either of the other two, but it wasn't able to capture that. Right. So things are taken out of context. Another one that I was just looking at was immaculate. Let me see if I can get the right words. I had just written them down. But immaculate can mean, in the United States, immaculate conception, or it can mean like sterile, like a room. Yes. And if you put that into Google Translate, I'm not finding where I had written it, but each of the different languages had, like, one of them was like naive, one of them was like innocent. So they were going after the immaculate conception terminology, right, where they weren't capturing, you know, my room is immaculate right now. I'm so proud of myself for cleaning it. So, you know, there it's completely taken out of context, and that's where you still need a human to do it. Or you have slang.
That's always a huge problem with translation. Yeah.
Yeah, like in New England, we'd say, "Oh, he's wicked smart." Well, in this, you'd never hear "y'all are wicked smart," because you'd never hear "wicked" and y'all together. Oh. So things like that it doesn't do. So we really say anything that has the can affect your bottom line, don't use machine translation. So we specialize in marketing translation, legal, and anything in the life sciences, which can be research all the way up through regulatory authorization forms, commercialization, and then service delivery, where you have a human actually facilitating a doctor's conversation. So those are the areas that we specialize in and say you really need a high quality translation.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, sort of in the context of like somebody in a sales development role who might be prospecting internationally. You know, you're thinking if they're sending out marketing collateral to someone in a language that it wasn't initially written in, and they're just transcribing it via Google, like the irreparable damage you can do to that prospect in terms of sending them a piece of content that is essentially just gibberish because it's not picking up nuances and stuff like that, could really just like damage that first impression that the SDR and the prospect has, to the point where they're like, well, I don't want to do business with you. You're not putting in, you know, the effort into effectively translating this, or I just don't understand you, so I'm not going to bother. There are plenty of different reasons why, you know, that just wouldn't work. And so having effective, like I was saying before, like true multilingual content is where something like that would come in handy for someone in a sales role.
Yes, exactly. And even with someone in a sales role, let's move backwards a little bit. There's a whole movement towards account-based management and getting, you know, it's called ABM, or getting sales and marketing to work together. If you start well before the sales rep is getting involved and have marketing focus on making sure that your website is set up to take people through the buyer's journey, and then your inbound, you're doing stuff to drive people to your website. If that's translated, then when they come to your website, make sure they're answering the big 5 questions. You know, there's something about costs and who we are and who uses, what our differentiators are, and then our features, and then a call to action of what do I do next. So if you handle that from your social media to your website, and then you have a chat bot or multilingual chat on there, by the time that person gets to the sales rep, even if you have to do it in stilted language, you've opened your arms and made it so welcoming to somebody else that doesn't speak either fully English Or then you can get a telephone interpreter on, if they, let me repeat that. So by the time they get to the sales rep, they've already been warmed up. They have information on your company.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like you can handle languages. And then when the salesperson gets on, the prospect is more open to having a limited English conversation, or you can get a telephone interpreter on the line to facilitate that conversation.
Right. Yeah. So they already kind of understand, like, this company's done some of that work to enable, a multilingual lead gen process and sort of give me the resources I need in my own language to make the decision. Do I want to continue talking with them? Is this a fit? Things of that nature. So that, yeah, like you said, when you get to that point of them actually talking to a sales rep, it's not like a shock where it's like, oh, I was given a piece of content that means nothing to me. This is something I don't want to deal with. Goodbye.
Right.
So delivering like content that makes sense, it's relatable to them in the way that they understand it, and making sure that they have the resources before making that transition is really important, I think, in, like you were saying, enabling that lead gen strategy.
Right. And research shows that 90% of the people that are searching for something online want to see information in their own language. 72% will spend more time consuming it if it's in their language. 56% will pay more money for something if they're getting information on their own language. And 42% will not purchase if the information is not in their native language.
That's
so
huge.
If they come and you've got the Google Translate plugin on there and it's crappy and too hard for them to read through it,
Bye-bye.
You've lost them. Bye-bye. That's right.
Yeah, those are numbers that are admittedly, to me, someone who isn't necessarily an expert in this space, but way higher than I would have imagined. I mean, obviously, I want to see something in my own language, and if I go to a website that has some poor translation, like, I'm probably not going to take a deeper look at it. But specifically, that 42% that you dropped there about people who just like simply won't go through the buying process, that's a big number that global companies really need to look at. If they're not stepping up their translation game, like, you're losing almost half your audience right off the bat.
Right.
Huge. So let's kind of shift a little bit to current climate when it comes to being international and sort of having a global presence as an organization. Business travel at this point is pretty much over, thanks to COVID, especially international travel. So, and a lot of organizations rely on international business trips, conferences, things of that nature to generate leads. How are you seeing teams go about finding leads internationally that, maybe normally would come through those in-person events? And how are they maybe actioning them a bit differently than they would be in the past?
Right. So usually executives from companies will travel all over the world and have meetings and do plant tours and stuff. And so since that stopped, the government has actually changed some of their STEP grant requirements. So small and mid-sized business owners can apply for STEP grants, which will help them do international trade because it helps with our balance of exports. So what they're doing is giving grants for companies to really do what we were talking about on their website, upgrading it to make sure they've got the content, the right messaging, and that then it'll pay for translation and help with social media.
Nice. So
I really suggest to company, and there's a lot of companies out there trying to juggle and figure out how to do this. And that's exactly what we specialize in is, how I like to look at it is that the social media is the cocktail party. So where you're supposed to be out there meeting people, you never know who you're going to meet, but you might meet somebody who can refer to you or might become a client. Okay, that's your social media. You're putting stuff out there to attract attention and connecting with the right people.
Right.
Then your website is your dinner table. This is where you're actually sitting down and having more in-depth conversation, where you're asking the questions and leading them through the buyer's journey. Mm. And so if you get that format done in English, then we can take you into the translation part of it, where we develop a strategy, a process, look at the technology that would support it to get the quality that you need to help non-English speakers to come through that buyer's process.
Nice. I'm wondering in that analogy, where's dessert? Because I'm a dessert guy. So I've got a cocktail table party. I've got
Dessert is the close. That
you know,
it,
they find you, you go through the cocktail party section, they move on to the dinner table, you've got a nice meal, and then bing, bang, boom, you close the deal, you have a chocolate cake for celebration. I like that. It's a good analogy.
that's your customer experience, to attract, engage, and delight. Cocktail party, dinner, and dessert.
Makes sense to me. Um, so this is obviously, looking internationally, having these processes and things in place to make sure your organization looks good on a global scale. But there's also advantages domestically to having multilingual content, so that you're not just, looking at other organizations in different countries and getting them to come to your cocktail party, dinner, and dessert. But within the United States, having multilingual content to attract other organizations in the United States is important too. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure, that's a huge missed opportunity with small and mid-sized businesses particularly. The second largest Spanish-speaking population in a country is here in the US. So Mexico has the largest Spanish-speaking population, then the US, and then you start talking about Spain and Peru and Nicaragua and all the other Spanish-speaking countries. So if you think about that, without even leaving our borders or dealing with anybody else's laws, you can sell to a whole new market here. So if you ever go to Spanish-speaking TV and you watch it, Telemundo or at Univision, you will see that all the major car manufacturers like Toyota and Honda, Hyundai, Chevy, they're all advertising there.
Mm-hmm.
The fast food restaurants like Carl's Jr. and Subway, you've got consumer products like Crest, you've got stores like Target, they all advertise there, and they just modify what the message is and show Latino people there. And this is going to continue to change because there's a cultural change also going on in the United States. It used to be the melting pot. You've heard of that, right? People come into the United States, they push away their culture and language, they try to assimilate as quickly as possible. That's no longer happening. Now it's more like a mixed salad. People are coming in and they want to keep their differences, keep the different flavors that they're bringing in. So even the next generation of kids that are born in a Spanish-speaking family, they're coming home and they're watching that Spanish-speaking TV, and they're keeping that and really embracing it. So if you are in the United States and you do identify an area or your marketplace that you're selling into, translate it. Mm-hmm. And then you'll pick up clients from here because you're opening your arms to welcome them. And you may even pick up business in Mexico, which is right next door.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, and you mentioned it earlier, it's small and medium-sized businesses that are missing this opportunity because you look at all of the examples you gave and it's massive organizations. They've already got global presences, and it can be kind of, I guess, intimidating if I own a smaller business to look at that and be like, well, I can't possibly imagine making a commercial in Spanish or releasing product information in Spanish. Like it's not the space for me, but like you said, it's an untapped market for so many organizations, and the existence of these huge companies shouldn't deter you. Like if anything,
and
there's opportunity.
So many different ways to do it. I mean, right next door, the town that I live in has a very big Brazilian Portuguese population. Mm-hmm. So if you're an English speaking business owner, pop a sign up there. It's simple to put up there. There's a lot of business can be done with with just gesturing and indicating what you want. So just putting that sign up there makes you welcome. If you've got a website, put a landing page up there. You're talking $100, $200 to translate some content to put up on your website that can give the basics about your company. And what it's doing is just opening the door, saying, hey, I'm friendly to you.
Exactly.
You can move on from there, but at least start there.
Yeah. I mean, why not have the welcoming opening arms to invite people into the cocktail party and continue that metaphor throughout the entire conversation? But
yes,
I wouldn't go to a cocktail party if someone didn't welcome me in. Like, I'm not going to barge in there. So have something simple set up to just show I can communicate with you. That markets. Love it.
Yeah. Or if you've got, then you get them into the door and they need to have instructions for something, then translate that one sheet. So maybe you're not verbally doing it, but you can hand them a sheet. And then you've got them at the dinner table and you can engage with them more.
Yeah.
Smile goes a long way.
Yes. So we've talked a lot about, when you're, and I think you actually segued into it nicely, but there are other business functions that can be enhanced with multilingual functionality. So you touched on chatbots earlier, different aspects of the website that, you can utilize different dialects or slang terms that get translated weirdly. Like there are things that you can do welcoming, opening arms right away on like your website or in initial messaging that shows somebody, hey, you can talk with me over here. Any other business functions you know of that can be enhanced with having this multilingual functionality outside of like sales and marketing and sort of what we were talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, let's dig into chatbots a little bit more. You spend most of your time developing your chatbot in English because you've got to
100%.
think through the questions, you've got to think through the answers, where people are going to go. Once you've thought that out, then it's very easy to translate it and have a multilingual chatbot that identifies what language somebody asks the question in, and then you can feed the answers to them. We actually offer multilingual live chat, which is more like outsourcing to a call center.
Right.
So if you get a certain amount of business that's coming in a language, you can hire a rep that will be trained for your business so they can give the answers over chat. So that's an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
Telephone interpreting, you can sign up for a free account and it's just a per minute charge. So whenever you need to talk to somebody, you can call into that. We had one client that said, look, I'm starting to get business inquiries in from China. And, can you translate emails so I can communicate back with them? And after a phone conversation, we realized that most of the questions that are being asked are the same. So why don't we put a landing page up there, put the, frequently asked questions, translate that information, and then people can find that without having to translate an email over and over and over again, or have a phone call and answer it over and over and over again.
Nice. Yeah. And that's like, not just sales and marketing, but think customer success, IT services like that. I mean, they're dealing with multilingual situations all the time. And if it is maybe in the customer success space, more back and forth, having that telephone interpreter would be super vital. Or if it's in the IT space and it's all about FAQs about, a software or something, that landing page could be really valuable to help just ease people into the situation that they want to be in and limit you in terms of how much effort you're putting into translating something over and over again. Like you're saying, it's just easiher.
Right. And and you're talking about the other functional groups too. So legal is real important. I mean, you might need to have disclosures and legal agreements translated. And when you do that, you want to make sure to say which language will prevail if there's any difference in interpretation between the original, the source and the target language. Another area that we work with companies a lot on is bilingual or employees that don't speak English. So, pre-COVID, it was really hard for manufacturers to hire employees. And I know some that have done really well with hiring people that don't speak English and then offering training and putting signs up about danger stuff and then having an equal way of how training and promotions happen. And then they made sure to promote bilingual people into supervisory and management positions so they could manage. And they have done phenomenally well because those people bring their friends and family in, and they've built a real culture about having a diverse workforce.
Yeah, and that's, a benefit in and of itself for a lot of people who they want to work in an organization that is culturally diverse and gives them that exposure. And even if you don't speak a different language, it's just something that you're looking for in your workplace. Like that's a benefit to not only having people who don't speak English as their first language, if that's what you do, but attracting people who want that sort of global environment. So twofold.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Wendy, I've learned a lot. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, I'm an expert in all of this stuff. So I think it was very educational for myself. Hopefully the audience finds it educational as well, especially the stuff with sales development. and working that globalization into your processes. I'd love to just wrap it up with having you, give a bit more information about your organization, Rapport International, where people can find you, any content that you specifically want to plug. Then we could wrap things up. But go ahead, take it away.
Okay, so yeah, I love to have people reach out to me. And if anybody wants any consultation about what they're thinking to do, I'm happy to do that for free anytime. That's one of our specialties, is anything from one language to another. We can help figure out the best way to do it, except for teaching. We don't get into any of the teaching area. The best way to find me is connect with me on LinkedIn. So if you just search Wendy Pease, spelled Pease, and language expert, I'll come up. I post something up there every day. Today's post was about talk like a pirate. Tomorrow is National Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Oh man, good day.
We don't translate from pirate to English, but like playing around with languages.
I was going to say, people don't talk enough about pirate. That's a language that I can speak very well, and it's not my first language. So I guess
good. Well, go read our post today and see if you know what that translates into without reading the answer.
Now you're putting me on spot.
Now you can also find us on our website at Rapport, RAPPORT, translations.com. And there we do have a learning center with tons of information. It's blogs and videos and all sorts of stuff that you can sort by topic and by format that you want it. So,
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for hopping on. AJ. Really appreciate it. Remember, everyone out there, follow Demand Drive on social, subscribe to our newsletter. And if you want to get in touch by sending me a message on LinkedIn, I try to post every day, but I'm not as good as Wendy, but I try to get out there. So send me a message on LinkedIn, send me an email. Happy to have a conversation with anyone, and be on the lookout for the next 5 questions.